Regardless of what you do in life and where you go, respect is going to be given when it's earned, and you have to go out and earn it every single day.
我与浩浩正共同筹备一堂全新课程，不露脸 YouTube 赚美金。现在有特别福利，我将赠送课程限量早鸟粉丝折扣码，只要填写以下调查问卷就可得到，赶紧行动吧！
So it didn't work out with the marriage, but then she became your business partner, your first marriage.
She did, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And you still are.
We still are. So the marriage didn't work out. And it was just one of those things where it wasn't an ugly divorce. It was just, marriage wasn't in our cards. We're great friends. Marriage wasn't in our cards. But we both had an appetite for business and to accomplish things. And we thought, well, what if we continued to do business together? And do you think we can? And it felt like it was like we could make something happen, and we did.
What's the first thing you splurged on when you realized you had enough to splurge?
Okay. So, all right. The first thing I splurged on. So when I was a kid, 14 years old, 13, 14 years old, in my mind, what it meant to be successful, it was a Rolex watch.
Ah.
Right. So there was such a valuable lesson out of this. So I thought for years, oh wait, every successful man has a Rolex watch and has diamonds in it. So when I finally was making a little bit of money, and this was in 1999, and I thought, okay, and this, by the way, I was still living in an apartment, paying monthly rent, but again...
Oh, you renting and buying a Rolex?
I was just renting horrible financial decisions.
You should definitely own if you're buying a Rolex, okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what not to do. So I thought, this is it. I'm going to splurge, and I went and I got myself a Rolex, and I wore it. At that time, I was wrestling. I wore it in the ring, not for a match, but I was doing an interview in the ring. And I wore it in the ring, and a melee broke out, which always happens in the wild world of professional wrestling. One of the wrestlers fell on the Rolex when it came off. It broke. Live TV, and you see me, oh my gosh, my Rolex. But I'm supposed to be in the moment and wrestling these other guys. Oh no, my Rolex. Like you could see the tail. I'm trying to get my Rolex, and somebody's like kicking me, and they're trying to get it. So I finally get my Rolex back. I go backstage, and I look at it. I'm heartbroken now. This is my thing. And I go home that night, and I remember immediately thinking, this is a sign. And I
believe in signs.
Yes, it's a sign.
Yeah.
And I will, and I don't need it, and it wasn't right for me at that time, and I never got anything like that again.
Everyone today has been asked to clarify their vision for 2020 for this year. Do you have one for yourself? Are you one who sets goals?
I do,
yeah.
Yes. But I also find it very consistent, like even throughout the year, I'm trying to set goals too as well. The vision for me in 2020 is, well, now since the passing of my dad, it shifted a little bit into just a greater appreciation for life. And when I talk about these little things and like really appreciating these little things, I mean little things and really truly being in the moment and being present and how important that is. And so even more present, because the other stuff I feel, you know, the fame and the accolades and all that stuff is awesome, but that comes and goes. This kind of connection, this and what I have with my family and my daughters and people, like that means everything to me.
What is the purest, highest, truest intention behind it all? Because I know at the end of the day, it isn't all about fame, and it isn't all about making money. So the reason why you want to continue to grow and succeed is what?
To create an amazing experience for people. And that's important to me, because that's an opportunity that I have to give joy and help, whether it transform or a movie or a thing or whatever it is. Like that's the audience's experience. Audience experience is something that's deeply personal to me. And I think that goes back to when so before the bright lights of the WWE, I was wrestling in a small wrestling company. I would wrestle in flea markets and used car dealerships. You put a ring in the used car dealership in the parking lot. But the reason why I bring that up, in state fairs, but there was an intimacy there. And even at that level, it was always about, well, how can I send the audience home happy? and make people feel good. And by the way, I also feel like if you're in a position to make people feel good, that is such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful thing.
I know we did you for Masterclass for OWN, and something you said there really stuck with me, that the most powerful thing you can ever do is to be yourself.
Be yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you were talking about that earlier, about that moment that you learned to be authentic is when everything changed.
That's when everything changed. It's like a shift and click moment for me, when I realized there's great power in being myself, same thing for all of us. But I believe it's the most powerful thing that we could be. It's easier said than done, because I struggled for a long time trying to figure out, well, what's my identity and who am I? And for example, when I got to Hollywood, the very first time I got to Hollywood in the early 2000s, I was told, again, well, if you want to be a star, then maybe you shouldn't talk about wrestling, maybe you shouldn't go to the gym as much, maybe you shouldn't raise your silly eyebrow, and there was a lot of things like that. And when you don't know, you buy into it. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe, so don't call yourself The Rock. Okay, so I went through that entire process for years trying to figure out who I was. And then when you look back on my earlier career, the films I was doing, they were good, but just not, like, oh, that's how I like to see him, because he is his true authentic self.
And have you had a sweet revenge moment?
Okay, so at this time when I felt like, okay, I really need to make a change in my career. I need to be me, and I want to have the kind of career that is a global career. And I said, I'm not quite too sure how we're going to do it, but I need you to buy into the vision with me, and I'm willing to put in the work with my own two hands. As I was telling my agency at that time in Hollywood. And they all looked at me like I had three heads, and they thought, well, we just don't. They thought, okay, sure, kind of placating me. And then eventually I'd left them and then decided, you know what, my name is The Rock, and I come from the world of professional wrestling, and I look the way I look, and I talk the way I talk, and I love to work out, and you know what, this is who I'm gonna be. And then here I am today. So for those who said, we don't get it, kind of sweet revenge.
So what are you now most grateful for today?
I'm most grateful for life. I'm most grateful for an opportunity. I'm most grateful for my family. Gratitude is a big thing with me. I mean, it is truly my anchor.
Yeah.
Yes,
mine too.
you too, right? It's my anchor, and I wake up with a heart full of gratitude. And even in death, and even when things don't go right, and even though I didn't make it to the NFL, me making it to the NFL was the best thing that never happened.
Now, you're one of the highest paid actors in the world.
Oh, thank you. I do all right, thank you.
You do all right. And does that title, the sexiest man alive, the highest paid in the what do those titles mean, if anything? You're the greatest, you're the most popular, you're the most followed, you're the most.
It's great for the ego. It's wonderful. Kidding.
Yeah. The better question is, how do you keep your ego in check when all of that is happening all around you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Very important. People I have around me, and how important that is.
Do you have anybody who can tell you the truth at this point?
Yeah, she's called my wife. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Lauren can tell you the truth.
Yes, Lauren can tell me the truth. But by the way, and this is where it's the tricky thing for us too, being in this position, is we want to make sure that we have people around us who are inspired to do well and reach for and continue to share our vision, but also at times say, well, I'm not quite too sure if that's the right thing to do. So look, I've had a wonderful career, especially coming from being evicted, and those titles are nice and everything is fine. But honestly, I'm so grateful to be in the position I'm in, and I never take anything for granted. I try not to.
Aren't you glad that you were once evicted? Because it gives you such an appreciation for what you have now.
It just gives such perspective. When we were 14 years old, we lived in Hawaii, and we lived in a small efficiency apartment. And my mom and I came home, and I'll never forget, the rent was $180 a week. And there was an eviction a week. And there was an eviction notice on the door. And this was the final eviction notice. Like, that's the one. My mom started crying, and I never forgot in that moment. It was a seminal moment for me, because I felt like I never want to be in this position again. What can I do? So at 14 years old, I thought, well, the heroes in my life, Muhammad Ali, for example, professional wrestlers, they're all men who have worked hard with their hands and they built their body. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what my dad taught me and these other heroes. I'm going to go build my body so we're never evicted again. But being evicted, by the way, has, as you were saying, has not only given me just great perspective, but also great gratitude, but also, and my team and my family, we laugh at it, but I feel this way, like, oh, well, you know, we're a month away from being evicted. I got to go to work. Like, I still have that in my head.
You still have that.
I still have that in my head, you know, but it keeps you grounded, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's why the most this and the most that, again, it's wonderful, but the alternative is what I once was.
And it also doesn't change the way you're wired, because I still save toast. I do. I will save toast rather than throw it away. And I know there's going to be more toast, but I still do because there's something in me, because when we were growing up, we had to save it. You know, you weren't allowed to like throw food away. So there was a really big deal. So here's the deal. You have now you get the biggest paychecks. You have all this money, acclaim, fame. You didn't have that growing up. How do you raise children who have good sense and are also kind when they have everything? Because part of what made you who you are is having had that eviction notice and having not had everything. So how do you do that how are you planning to do that with your children?
So for example, with our 18-year-old daughter, it was really important that we share those stories, share the stories about being evicted. Her mom's parents were immigrants who came over from Cuba. It's important that we've always shared those stories. And also, we try and keep it as simple as we possibly can. We have a farm in Virginia. Happily to say that I've moved my family here to Atlanta. So,
Yay!
place 30, 45 minutes away where it's very quiet, but also just making sure that we continue to instill in the babies and the kids the value of $1 and what it means and the value of food, and always saying how grateful we are and the things that we're grateful for, especially at that young age.
So I want to know, how is success different from the way you imagined it would be?
I never imagined this. I at one time when I was a kid, I did feel in my heart and in my gut that I thought, oh, I think the world's going to hear from me. I don't know how, but I do feel that way. But I never thought in my mind it was this level of success or fame even. It was, I don't know how, but the world's going to hear from me. So, you know, which is maybe why, you know, at times I could walk around and I could look at things like I'm a big kid, like everything at times can be like I'm in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, where I'm just really in awe of everything that's really happening around me. I still see every opportunity that I have as like a little crack in the wall, a little scratch, and it's almost as if like every opportunity the scratch represents every opportunity. Therefore, the success on the other side of the scratch is the light. Scratching hard, clawing, digging, it's that mentality to really take advantage of every opportunity I have. So,
have you reached the point where you accept your success? Like the world sees it, we all know it, 169 million Insta followers. Have you accepted it? Do you believe it? Have you owned it for yourself?
I have today, yes, and but in this, yes, this time in my life,
yeah,
yes, because there was a time where I wasn't quite too sure if I was confident enough as to the why and why it was happening and what am I doing, because it wasn't very systematic. It's not like I had a big blueprint, because there really wasn't a blueprint for me to follow when I came from wrestling to Hollywood. There wasn't oh, look, just do it like that other black Samoan guy did it.
Yeah.
And you're going to be great.
Yeah.
Because at that time, the biggest movie stars in the world were George Clooney and
and then the movie you did with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was sort of like, it felt like it was the passing of a torch.
I did a movie called The Rundown, yes. Where he walked by and he said, have fun. And he was great in that.
And do you prefer the acting or the wrestling or all of it? all of it is connected for you?
I think all of it is connected. You know, what I do love, I love whether it's acting or wrestling or producing or any of the other businesses or investments, it all just has to have a connective tissue to me. The past couple of days, my father, he passed away on January 15th, and we just buried him a few days ago. As we all go through this, and we all go through this, our own process of grieving and regret and all these things and emotions that we go through. And again, it's the cycle of life, and it's beautiful, it's painful, it's amazing, it's incredible. I had a very complicated relationship with my dad. And it was really, there was a foundation of tough love with my father. And wasn't a big I love you guy. The relationship that I had with my dad was a relationship that was appropriate at that time. I felt that he was proud of me when I became successful in a industry that he had given his life to. So right. My father, for a lot of you guys who don't know, he was a professional wrestler.
And so was your grandfather.
And my grandfather was a professional wrestler too. And my dad, Rocky Johnson, was, I'm half black and half Samoan. The reason why I say this, my dad was a black man coming up in the 60s and 70s in a world of professional wrestling, which in a lot of the companies he wrestled at was all throughout the South. So he was a trailblazer in many ways, because what he was able to do as a black man was wrestle. We lived here in Atlanta when I was a kid. What he was able to do was go to these small towns where it was an all-white wrestling business, an all-white audience. And at that time in the late 60s, where racial tension and divide was still very strong and the wounds were still there, but he was able to change behavior, the audience's behavior. So this all-white audience who would never cheer a black man cheered him in these arenas. Mm-hmm. I think my dad was a man who against the odds made it, and but he would get up at usually 5:30 in the morning, and he would say, if I get up, you're gonna get up too. He would drag me to the gym, and by the way, I'm 5 years old, and he would drag me to the gym. Yes. And I wouldn't work out, but he would just make sure that I was there and be with him, and that was our time that we could spend together. And but I would say my work ethic from my dad always said too that regardless of what you do in life and where you go, respect is going to be given when it's earned, and you have to go out and earn it every single day.